Hey guys, what's going on? So I have an album review for PUTRIDITY with their debut album, Mental Prolapse Induced Necrophilism. So if you're not familiar with PUTRIDITY, legendary brutal death metal band out of Italy. One of the most extreme bands in the genre, and one of the most innovative bands as far as extremity goes in the genre. These guys really did push the limits of how crazy brutal death metal can get with all three of their albums that they put out. This is the only album I haven't reviewed from them yet, and it's probably my favorite from them as well, so I figured why not knock it out. But anyways, I think this came out in like 2007 or 2008. And it's definitely the least popular out of the three, which the only reason I can think of why is because production-wise it's a little more rough around the edges. But I think this album has a bit of an advantage over the other two in terms of energy and composition as well. So anyways, I'll just show the CD really quick. First, cool album cover. It's redone art. Sorry about the glare, but the original was done by John Zig. I can't remember who did the redone art, but I actually kind of like the redone art more, even though I love John Zig's artwork. There's the spine. I really like that bold text. And there's the back, the track listing. You also have some bonus tracks, which I actually enjoy. You've got the demo from 2005, and then the Obscene Perversion demo from 2004. Both of those demos have programmed drums, actually, because it was a one-man project at the time. But anyways, there's the disc, and then got a close-up of the art behind the disc. Right there, you can see the original album cover, the Zig art, and then there's the demos. Booklet, got some liner notes. Something that's kind of interesting. He lists off like his biggest influences for this release, which are Mortician, Disgorge from California, obviously, Suffocation, Cannibal Corpse, and Enmity. Now, like, Disgorge, Suffocation, and Enmity, those are all super obvious other brutal death metal bands of that style. But Mortician, the only reason I could see the influence in is in like the demo with like the programmed drums. But Cannibal Corpse, the interesting thing is if you listen really closely, you could actually hear a good bit of like Butchered at Birth kind of style drumming on here. Obviously the drums are much faster and more technical on here, but that like inverse skank, the drummer does that on here quite a bit, actually. Like, not as much as he does those like crazy fast blasts, but it builds a lot of energy, and I think it's something that more brutal death metal bands should do. It's really cool. It doesn't sound like thrashy or OSDM-y. There's band photos. It doesn't sound like thrashy or OSDM-y or anything, because he adds like some like extra like double bass to it, but it sounds really cool. But anyways, there's a band photo. They hadn't gotten that other guy on vocals yet. I forget his name, but he was also in The Evangelic. But Andrea did vocals on this release, and his vocals are pretty different. They're more nasally, not quite as low, but they've got like this nasally kind of snarl to them. They're really ugly sounding, and I actually really enjoy them. But anyways, so like I said, production-wise, this one's a little more like rough around the edges. It's a little more blown out sounding. It's pretty raw, but not in an old school like 90s sort of way. It doesn't sound raw in the same way that an album like, I don't know, like Lividity, Fetish for the Sick or something sounds. It sounds raw more in like a digital, modern sort of way. Like, it sounds more like a demo, but honestly I really like that though. The drums have this really, and the guitars both have this really blown out, distorted sort of sound to them that I really enjoy, honestly. It creates a really interesting, very processed sounding wall of sound. Vocals on here are also pretty loud in the mix. And overall, I mean, this is a remaster, so I'm not as familiar with the original mix, but it's a very loud sounding album production-wise, which all three PUTRIDITY's albums are very loud production-wise, the way they're mastered. But this one is loud to the point where it sounds like blown out, whereas the other two are just as loud, but have more of a smooth, sort of clean production to them, but this one's more raw, like I said. Something that I really like about this album is that songwriting-wise, it's a little more dynamic, and by dynamic I don't mean like they get super weird and experimental, but while the other two albums focus primarily on speed and technicality, this album is just as fast and technical, but they add in more chugs and like slams, grooves, kind of stuff like that, and it really ramps up the energy. And like I said, there's like the Cannibal Corpse kind of Butchered at Birth skank, like inverse skank beat sometimes on here that really, like I said, makes this album feel really energetic. This album has a really gross sort of sound to it, in a different way than your average brutal death metal album. This album sounds really like deathly. I don't know how to explain it. Like that smell of like a dead. I don't know, when you smell like something dead, like that really gross sort of smell. This album brings that sort of imagery to mind. I don't know how else to explain it. That sounds so fucking weird, but the way the vocals sound, that really nasally snarl, and then the production mixed with the really gray sort of album cover, it really builds this ugly, grim sort of feeling in the music, which I really enjoy. There's a few songs on here that have some really good slams, which is weird for a brutal death metal album of this style. This is obviously the more blasty, technical sort of stuff if you're familiar with PUTRIDITY. But the one song on here that's probably my favorite song, Necrophilic Limitations, it has this one slam like a little towards the end of the song that's so fucking good. Yeah, that shit goes like so hard. I mean, the vocal pattern over it as well, it makes you want to move around. It's so awesome. And then Molesting Vomited Decapitation also has some really interesting sort of grooves to it. Abortifacient Horde of the Bottomizer is a really good album opener, honestly. After the intro, I think it's like an ambient sound or like a sample or something. The album honestly could go without the intro, but it is what it is. It's not that big a deal. It's just like a minute long. But yeah, Fermented Entrails has a really cool sort of vocal intro to it, where there's like a double layered vocal of like a pig squeal over just like a regular guttural, and it sounds really gross. So that's a really cool sort of thing. The song titles on here are also really, really over the top. Like the other albums have like just like big words and like long, those type of long brutal death metal song titles, but on here they're like Molesting Vomited Decapitation, Zombie Oral Sex. That's a funny one. This is actually a really cool song title. Convulsive Incestuous Devourment. That's fucking nasty. But anyways, yeah, this album has more energy than the other two in my opinion. The other two albums, they're equally as fast and technical and maze-like, but I feel like they're so maze-like to the point where you can't quite move around to them as much as you can with this one. There's some parts on this album that literally just make you want to like dance and move around. It's a little groovier, not in like a super like hip-hoppy sort of way like a lot of groovy brutal death metal is, but it's very like stompy. I don't know how else to explain it. It makes you want to like just move around and stomp and shit. That sounds so stupid, but yeah, this is an album that really will just hype you up. I don't know what else I could say about it really. If you know PUTRIDITY, you know what they sound like. They're one of the most extreme brutal death metal bands ever. I mean, super fast shit, ultra guttural, everything that you already probably really like about brutal death metal, like the super obvious shit, like, oh, it's super fast and down-tuned and guttural and heavy or whatever. PUTRIDITY is just that, but times 10. I mean, if you've heard them before, you know exactly what I mean. But yeah, definitely don't skip over this album if you have, or if you're new to PUTRIDITY. This isn't I don't know if I'd say this is the best place to start, because they didn't quite find their signature sound until the album after this, but I kind of like the sound on this album a little more. I don't know, this album is just really over the top, and in a different sort of way than the other two albums. This album has more of an atmosphere to it. It's really menacing sounding, and yeah, I'd highly recommend it. I think I'd give this one like a solid 8.5 out of 10. Really great album and a little underrated. So yeah, PUTRIDITY with Mental Prolapse Induced Necrophilism. So go check it out if you haven't. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.